another edition of Crafting and Crime Daily, the show where I do some crafting. Well, I bring you recaps of live trials that are going on YouTube. We're covering the trial of, it's actually the retrial of Mark Jensen. This will be, day 6 or 7. Day 6. Day 6. Yeah, let's go with that. So today I am working on a hooded scarf that I started last night in the live. So this is what I've got done so far. This is this really cool yarn. It's Bernay Pop. This is the yarn right here, Bernay Pop, made by Bernay. The color is Violet Vision. Look at those beautiful colors, pinks and purples. It's just gorgeous. So I am making this for a friend of mine, one of my subscribers who's really, she's like a sister to me, and I want her to have it. She lives in Alaska and she's cold. So I'm gonna give it to her. So here is what it will look like when it is finished. Now, I've made these many times. I just love, here's the book that it comes from, Hooded Scarves, Volume 2, Book 2, Hooded Scarves, Book 2. Now, it's made by Leisure Arts. If you're looking for this book, look it up on Amazon or go to www.leisurearts.com and see if you can find the book. But here is a picture of the scarf that I'm working on. Obviously, here it's solid. I'm working on not solid. And that actually doesn't even give you a really good picture of it. This is kind of a better picture of it with the hood on, like there. See, it has the hood that'll go over it. I had one on yesterday. Oh, love these things. Okay, so that's that. I've got the pattern down. So I'm going to be doing this while I talk to you about today's trial, Mark Jensen. So they completed the testimony of Kelly. I guess her name now is Brooks, Kelly Brooks. You know, I hate it when you find mistakes. Like, I just made a mistake. Yeah, we're gonna live with it. Yes, we are. Yes. What the heck did I do here? I did 4 instead of 3. Oh my word. What? No, I did 2 instead of 3. All right, we'll figure it out. So Kelly Brooks. Her name used to be Kelly Levante, then it was Kelly Greenman, then it was Kelly Jensen, and now it is Kelly Brooks. So here's what I gleaned after all was said and done with her testimony. She had an affair with Mark Jensen that started in June or July of 1998. At the time that it started, she knew that he was married and he had children. And it started out as just very flirtatious. You know, she was the executive assistant to his boss, Mark Jensen's boss, out of the corporate offices in St. Louis, to a stock brokerage firm. So that's how Mark met this woman. Because he was managing the office where he lived in Kenosha. I think it was out of Racine. I don't know. I don't know the area up there. So anyway, that affair started. She decided, with full knowledge that he's married, has children, that she's going to have an affair with this man, even though she's engaged to be married. And she actually goes through with the wedding. And her testimony was that it was too late to call off the wedding. It had already been planned, and she had dated this man for 6 years. It was an on again, off again relationship for 6 years. And so she went through with it. That was in September of 1998. And this is actually when the affair between she and Mark kind of heats up. Now, by October of 1998, she puts a halt. She puts the brakes on and tells Mark, I need to try to make this 1-month marriage of mine work. So supposedly between October of 1998 and January of 1999, when her and her husband had a big fight and she leaves him and gets a divorce, she does not have sex with Mark Jensen. Now, that's between October and January. Now, we know that Mark Jensen's wife dies in December. Now, one of the questions I posed yesterday was, what is the importance of all these penis pictures? And apparently, according to the special prosecutor for, the prosecution, he used to be the state attorney, and he tried this case back in 2008, and at the end he's like, I'll try this case again if I have to, and now he has to. So I think I get the sense he's no longer with the state attorney's office, but was hired for this case. In any case, I'm trying to think what I'm doing here. He says that when Julie Jensen, because Julie Jensen had an affair back in 1991, Mark was so incensed by her having this, so pissed off with her, that he spent the next 6 to 7 years dropping these penis pictures everywhere he could. Now, it was never proved that he was the one that was making the harassing phone calls and leaving these pictures around. But when they later on find out that he's got this notebook in his office with all these pictures, and he's got hundreds of them on his computer, they kind of put 2 and 2 together, and they're surmising that, So he has a couple of motives to kill his wife. One, he's very, very angry. He's never gotten over the fact that she had an affair. Never mind that he had one too. And number 2, he's having an affair with this woman that he apparently really loved. So that's that. So that is her testimony. So when she leaves her husband in January of 99, she goes running back to Mark. And one of the things the defense pointed out, and it was something that had crossed my mind as well, at no time did Mark ever pressure her to leave her husband. When she said, listen, I need to try to make this work with my husband, he's like, okay, take all the time you need. I'm here. I'll just, I'll be waiting. And he didn't pressure her. So was this really a motive for him to kill his wife? And there were conversations that Kelly and Mark had where she pressured him, and she said to him, hey, what are you going to do about your problem? Like, he was asking her about her and her husband. So now she's asking, hey, what are you going to do about your wife? And he kept saying, I'm going to have a conversation with her. And at one point, I guess he said, I did have a conversation with her, and she agreed she doesn't love me anymore. And but at no time does he mention the word divorce. Never mentions that. So then we get a first responder, the EMT paramedic, who is still working for the same department 25 years later. He's now the assistant chief firefighter at this department. So he, at the time that this death occurred, the EMTs were on call. So he was taking call, but he was doing it from his home. And when they got called out to these scenes, they would respond in their personal vehicle. So he got the call, and at 4:32 in the afternoon of December 3rd, which I forgot to tell you guys. the guy that testified, I talked about yesterday, the guy that testified that he was Mark's coworker, and they would have all these conversations in Mark's office. You know, he would come in and lean on the credenza and put his feet up in the chair, and they would have, you know, those kind of conversations. He also testified that on December 3rd, Mark did not come to work. No, he didn't work that day in the office. So, just saying. So anyway, the EMT, he gets a call at 4:32. And he responds to the residents. He's the first person there. He finds Mark Jensen, leads him into the bedroom. He finds Julie Jensen laying face down in the bed. And he can tell by the state of her body that rigor mortis has set in. And what that means is once you're dead for longer than 30 minutes, your body's going through this process where the blood is all pooling to the most dependent part of, you know, if you're laying on your face, it's all pooling in the bottom part of your body. If you're laying on your back, it's pooling in your back, and your body gets really, really stiff. Now, eventually that goes away. This can always give people some idea about the time of death. So he could tell by the state of her body being already in this rigor that she had been dead for a length of time, longer than 30 minutes, longer than it would be feasible to start rescue breathing. He said no, that she was beyond that. So the police are called out, and they come to the scene, and they call the detective. His name is Paul Ratsberg, and they say, "Hey, Julie Jensen is dead." And Paul Ratsberg, this resonates with him. Paul Ratsberg, he had already gone home for the day. He works till 3:30 in the afternoon, and he had already gone home for that day. So they call him at home, and they say, "Hey, Julie Jensen is dead." Now, he knows Julie Jensen because he was one of the people assisting with all of those harassing phone calls and photographs that she was getting. She would always call Officer Cosman out to her house, but Cosman would report to this detective, and so he was aware. He was also aware, and he does testify to this. He says, "I was aware of Julie Jensen. You know, I was aware that she was concerned about her welfare, that something might happen to her, and something happens to her." So now he's not allowed to talk about, or I'm sure they cautioned him not to talk about the voicemails, because Julie made voicemails to Officer Cosman, not Ratsberg, but Officer Cosman, and about her impending death. Like, "I think he's trying to poison me. I think, you know, if something happens to me, he should be your suspect." Same stuff she put in the letter that nobody's going to know about. They're not going to know about these emails or these voicemails either. But Detective Ratsberger knew about these voicemails, so he responds out to the scene and begins a death investigation. So one of the things that the jury sees is Officer Ratsberger. I didn't realize how antiquated 1998 was, but he takes this video camera. Back then it was VHS. Remember VHS cameras? First of all, those things were huge. Remember, you put them up on your shoulder, and so he goes out there with his VHS and he films the home. So the jury actually got to see pictures of this home. Now, let me tell you, this home was clean as a whistle. Yeah, much cleaner than my home. Everything was in place. Interesting. There was also a lot of photographs that the jury got to see. So the officer testified that he collected the trash. They collected anything that might have been in the drains of the sinks, any liquid that may have been in any glasses, because he was looking for ethylene glycol. He knew to look for ethylene glycol. Just saying. Based probably, now the jury's going to wonder, how did he know that? Well, I'm going to tell you it's from her voicemails to the police department, but nobody can tell the jury that. So he anything that has fluid in it. On the bedside, there was leftover macaroni and cheese and some other food that was collected. Some cups that had liquid in them, those were collected. I think that's, but a lot of stuff was collected, sent to the lab. I don't know if we're going to hear from a lab technician about the results of that stuff. We are going to hear quite soon, I think, from this jailhouse snitch. I can't wait for that. So also shown yesterday was some footage of an interrogation that was done of Mark Jensen by Detective Ratzberger on April 21st of 1999. And what the video footage shows is, by now, Detective Ratzberger has all of the printouts of the emails between Kelly and Mark, and he's asking Mark questions about Kelly. And he's like, oh yeah, she's my boss's assistant, and yeah, we're coworkers, and so he's asking him about all these emails, which I thought was really interesting. Now, the footage is really bad. I mean, 25 years ago, the videotaping was bad. Like they don't have 4K like we have today. It's grainy, you can hardly hear it, and so they didn't show a lot of it. Then the next thing they went over with Detective Ratzberger was a log that Julie was keeping. Officer Cosman had instructed her to keep a log of the harassment that she was getting. And that started back in 92. So she had a notebook that went all the way back to 1992 of all this harassment. Every phone call she ever got, and almost all of them were hang-ups. Every phone call, every email, because eventually sometimes she got emails, every photo that was found, she had records of it for 6 years. And all of that stopped in the summer of 1998 when Mark started having this affair with Kelly. So today we're going to see the cross-examination of Detective Ratzberger. Should be interesting. Probably lengthy, though, I'm thinking. Pretty lengthy. So yesterday, I talked about Paul Martin Andrews, The Boy in the Deer Box. This is from my crime calendar that I got from one of my friends. Thank you, Jen. I've been going over this crime calendar. So today is part 2. Today is Thursday, January 19th. Yeah. So I'm going to read part 1 because it's really quick. I'll just read it from yesterday in case you don't remember. Part 1, trapped underground. Paul Martin Andrews was on his way to the convenience store to pick up some milk on the snowy afternoon of January 11th, 1973 in Portsmouth, Virginia, when a man stopped him. The man introduced himself as Pee Wee and offered 13-year-old Andrews $3 if he would help him and his brother move some furniture. Andrews hopped into Pee Wee's car, but he quickly grew uneasy. Pee Wee drove Andrews out into the woods, then told him he needed help lifting supplies out of his brother's deer box, an underground box where a hunter hides while hunting deer. When they get to the deer box, Pee Wee pulled out a knife, pushed Andrews inside the box. The deer box was 4 feet wide and 4 feet wide and 8 feet deep. Pee Wee beat and raped Andrews 3 times a day for the next 7 days. On the 8th day, he shackled Andrews' ankle to the box and left him for dead. Now we're going to read part 2, The Escape. On January 19th, 1973, okay, so this is 8 days later, Andrews heard a truck drive by the deer box. He screamed as loudly as he could. A hunter came over to the box, pointed his rifle at the door, and demanded that Andrews come out. Andrew explained he was chained inside the box, and the hunter opened it and found the boy bloodied and bruised. Andrews identified Pee Wee, a.k.a. Richard Osley, From police photos, Osley had served 10 years in prison for kidnapping, imprisoning, and abusing another child, and he was due in court on another child molestation charge the same day he abducted Andrews. Osley was sentenced to 48 years for the kidnapping and rape of Andrews. In 2002, Andrews told his story for the first time at Osley's parole hearing. Osley's parole was denied, and he was killed by his cellmate in prison 2 years later. Andrews continues to tell his story in the hopes of protecting children from what happened to him. Yeah. Keep your $3. You're a stranger. I'm not talking to you, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. So that's the show for the day. Yes, it was a quick one. As far as the Alex Jackson trial goes, yesterday they had a crime scene investigator on the stand all day. The jury got to see photos of the crime scene. Alex is charged with the shooting death of his father, mother, and sister. So that was basically what, you know, the crime scene investigator talks about, how they go about processing the crime scene. They show all the photos, and I'm sure it took a long time because the mother and sister were in separate rooms. Alex was found down in the basement. He had been shot in the foot, and his father was like 10 to 12 feet away from him. So the crime scene is vast. It covers this entire home. So I will bring you more on that tomorrow. I will see you then in Crafting and Crime Daily. Please don't forget to leave me a comment, hit that like button, subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell. You don't want to miss a single episode of Crafting and Crime Daily because Monday, the Murdoch trial starts. Yeah! We've all been waiting for the Murdoch trial. He's on trial for the murders of his wife Maggie and his son Paul. What I plan to do over the next day or two is I'm going to put together like a summation of all the criminal activity of the Murdoch family, so you can kind of get a flavor of why everyone is so interested in the Murdoch case. So I will see you tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.